autistic, person of color, and a woman. Today I'm going to talk completely openly about what it's like being a person of color, being a dark-skinned woman living in Switzerland who also has autism and who has an autistic child. I'm going to be very candid here, but I have to say this is my experience and this is not a generalization. So I've had some very positive experiences and some very negative experiences where I've experienced racism, sexism, and culture discrimination. Even though Switzerland is one of the most progressive countries when it comes to autism, the word autism was actually discovered by a Swiss psychologist back in the 40s or 50s. And there are so many accommodations that, the schools will provide here for somebody who's on the spectrum. Yet at the same time, the tolerance for difference, the tolerance for kids or adults being different is so low here, and the stigma is quite high. Kids who act differently or who are louder than others or more active or more physical than others get flagged so fast in an almost unfair way. So the disruptive behaviors or the extra behaviors that kids might have are flagged as negative very, very quickly. Here's my story of how I experienced this firsthand. When my son was about 3 years old, I used to go to like a moms and kids exercise class, kind of like a gym class, with about 15 other families. So there were 15 of us, kid and mom pairs, and you had different stations in the gym, and you would go around and play, climb, jump, whatever at each station. So I was at the basketball station and my son was having a great time of it. A mom comes along wanting for her son to have a turn, and my son was so into it, and I made a simple request to her, and I just asked her, can we go one last time before we switch to the next station? And she looks at me with this awful angry eyes, like as if she's going to tell me off, like I'm a 4-year-old myself. And she goes, it's my son's turn now, that is that. No more discussion. I'm so glad I can talk about this without getting completely emotionally overwhelmed, because I literally spent about $400 in therapy sessions just processing this trauma that happened to me. A complete stranger comes and yells at me as if I'm a little child, tells me off, no discussion. It's like a mean mom telling off her kid. It was just like me being autistic and highly sensitive. This stuff hurts. This type of behavior, this type of reaction to me, this type of scolding, telling off, it hurts. And I'm 100% sure she behaved that way with me. She had such little patience or tolerance for a simple request from me because I'm dark-skinned. Just because I'm dark-skinned, she just assumed that I don't know the rules, that I am purposely breaking the rules, that each kid gets a turn only once at each station. First of all, there are no such rules at this group that I was going to, this like play thing. And secondly, just because I'm dark skinned, I'm like against rules, I'm breaking rules. That's kind of really, really dumb to think. But that's exactly what happened. As a result, I quit this group. I absolutely couldn't go anymore. I was scared of spotting her on the street because she was absolutely mean to me, and my sensitivity level is so high. I did not have the tolerance for that. I have another story of a friend of mine who's from Africa, and about how her son was singled out by the kindergarten teacher because of his skin color, because of his race. So when this little boy started kindergarten, the teacher just came down on him hard for not being obedient or for not following rules or instructions. I'm pretty sure that if this kid had been white, he would have had a longer grace period to kind of settle into kindergarten, to settle into being taken care of by strangers or having to take orders from a completely new person or whatever. But just because this kid was African, his natural autistic ADHD tendencies were taken out of proportion as defiant and as disruptive. There was no gentleness or grace or understanding for his situation. Whereas if he had been a different skin color, there probably would have been a longer grace period where he could, kind of settle into this new experience. So you can see here, dark skin, specifically from Africa, equals defiant, negative, unruly, or ungrateful. There really is this sentiment here, unfortunately, specifically within educators, amongst educators, there is this sentiment. And I know that because I'm personally friends with a couple of teachers and teacher trainers who, when I've asked for feedback and help for this boy, they've given me this sort of answer. People from that part of, or that country, are just ungrateful, negative, and the hardest to manage in classrooms. I mean, is that not an overgeneralization? Is that not a blanket statement? Is that not racism, outright racism? I'm sorry, but that fits the definition of racism. It is. Finally, me coming out as being on the autism spectrum to my friends here was also taken a bit negatively. So the reactions that I got from my friends are that, oh, yeah, it makes sense that your son might be, but you, no, I think you're overthinking it. And when I would give examples of why I believe that I am on the spectrum, they would say, no, that's not really autism, is it? Am I being dismissed here because I'm an adult and I'm coming out and I don't look autistic? Or is it because of my different cultural background, my different skin colors? So culturally, I'm from Bangladesh and I'm from Canada. I grew up in both those countries and I have the nationality from both those countries. Am I being dismissed here as being like attention seeking or as overthinking or oversensitive or whatever? I don't know the answer here, but I really wish that some of my friends would have just been a bit more open to the fact that yes, I am autistic, and a person who's on the autism spectrum might look different, might not look different, but they are different. And if they feel that, if they're coming out and taking a brave step to say that, to share that with somebody, then it's usually not just for attention. There's a lot of thought behind that, and there's a sense of vulnerability in disclosing yourself. So if somebody's putting themselves in that vulnerable position, then maybe they're not lying or making this up or attention seeking, no matter what their cultural background is, American, Canadian, whatever your stereotype is for all people from that country just want attention. Now I want to share a couple of positive stories about being somebody of color and being on the autism spectrum in Switzerland. So my son looks not completely white, but he is light-skinned. So he's a lot lighter than me, but he still is at risk of being profiled as being racially different and therefore unruly or naughty or misbehaved in the classroom. I am so grateful that his teachers gave him a longer grace period. I'm so grateful that in his kindergarten, the teachers were highly trained when it comes to neurodiversity. They were really, really trained on identifying the signs of what autism looks like in kids of this age, and they were able to flag it. And they're actually the ones that flagged it to us and said, okay, your son might be on the spectrum. We recommend you getting him assessed. And we didn't brush them off. We actually took them seriously and followed that path. And I'm so glad we did, because it has improved our relationship with our son and with ourselves, like with me, my relationship to myself, from this new awareness and this new understanding. Another really positive experience that we have had is with our occupational therapist. Our occupational therapist is one of the leading teachers and trainers of occupational therapists specializing with kids on the autism spectrum. So she's really an expert. She is not Swiss, however, she is from Germany, and she has a long history of working with neurodiverse people, and that also includes a predisposition to working with diverse people, racially diverse people, culturally diverse people, and neurologically diverse people. So when she works with my son and me also, she's inclusive of me in the therapy, because I tell her again and again, look, like what my son is learning in this 1 hour session with you each week is only so much, but what I am learning as the caregiver of this child, and me also being on the autism spectrum, like I have real struggles regulating myself, getting triggered by my son and my daughter and my husband, you know, there's lots of triggers around here, but how do I deal with that? So she's including me in the therapy. She's also teaching me alongside my son, and this is amazing. And she doesn't hold my cultural background as against me, so she doesn't just dismiss me that, oh, the way you guys do it in Bangladesh or India, I also grew up in India for a couple of years, so the way you guys do it there is not really good for children's developmental health or to help them foster independence or whatever. She doesn't kind of negatively predispose my cultural norms against me as fueling the problems, the behavioral challenges, or the lack of independence that we might have. Because look, in Bangladesh and India, you stay with your child, you really support your child and way beyond their capability age. So for example, in Bangladesh, you'll hand feed your child until they're 8, 9, 10 years old, as long as they'll let you, basically, because as a mother, you take pleasure in that, you relish that. Like being able to feed somebody is an honor, and to be able to feed your child by hand is really a gift, and we really treat it that way. Whereas over here, that signals a lack of independence, and that is judged negatively. I'm very, very grateful that our occupational therapist is not holding my cultural norms against me or against my son. So what was it like actually finding out from a white Swiss female teacher that my son is probably autistic? I talk about that whole emotional experience in this video, so please watch that next.